Hi friends, it's Mrs. Vincent and I'm back again with chapter 6 of our story, The Unwilling Umpire. And I tend to record these videos in batches, so I actually had to go back myself and give myself a little bit of a refresher because I read you the last 5 chapters at one time a week ago. And life got really busy and I forgot all about it. So sometimes, young or old, we kind of need a little refresher for ourselves. So I looked back to the page before and remember that we had gone to our umpire's house and they were digging through that barrel that had been set on fire and they found that allergy medicine because they're trying to figure out, is it actually Pete's trailer? They weren't quite sure, but now that they've found what they think is this clue, this allergy medicine, we still aren't 100% sure if it's Pete's trailer, but we've got another clue. Okay, so here we are, chapter 6. Again, I like how they put that little baseball chapters. Pete wasn't faking his allergies, Dink said. So he was going into the clubhouse for his medicine, Josh said. We have to show this to Officer Fallon, Ruth Rose said, shoving the box into her pocket. The kids ran almost all the way to the police station. They hurried up the front steps and down the cool hallway and knocked on Officer Fallon's door. Come in, he said. When the kids entered, Officer Fallon was just hanging up the phone. Hey kids, the police chief said, looks like you've been running. Have a seat and catch your breath. Ruth Rose put the allergreen box on his desk and the kids sat down. We found that at the campsite, she said. This proves Pete really does have allergies. Officer Fallon held up a large hand. Whoa, slow down, he said, smiling at Ruth Rose. What campsite? We found out Pete is living in a trailer at the campground, Dink explained. So we went there and Ruth Rose found the box in the trash. Officer Fallon picked up the box. As he read the print, the kids explained how they'd found the article about Pete on the internet. We found out Josh stopped and looked guilty. What, Josh? Officer Fallon said. What were you going to say? Well, we found out that Pete stole a van, Josh said. Officer Fallon set the medicine box on his desk. Anything else? He asked. His first name is really Marion, Ruth Rose went on. He comes from Penobscot, Maine. I called the newspaper and a reporter told me his middle name is Peter. Officer Fallon rubbed his chin. Wow, you've been busy, he said. We don't think Pete stole anything, Ruth Rose said. We think he went inside to get his medicine, not to steal Mr. Pocket's baseballs, Dink added. Or maybe the medicine made a good excuse to go into the clubhouse, Officer Fallon offered. Remember, Pete did confess to taking the balls. Officer Fallon stood up and walked over to his office window. Why would he confess to something he didn't do? He asked over his shoulder. And there we have Officer Fallon taking a really close look at the piece of evidence that the children had brought with them. And he's wondering to himself, why on earth would someone admit to something that they didn't do? You might be wondering the same thing. He might have seen another person in the clubhouse, Josh volunteered. Maybe he's protecting someone. Maybe. All I know is Pete is unwilling to talk to me, Officer Fallon said. He shut up like a clam. When a clam is maybe feeling a little bit threatened, sometimes he'll open his shell and then other times zips himself up really tight. So what that means is Pete isn't talking. He's not talking to Officer Fallon at all. How long will Pete have to stay in jail? Ruth Rose asked. The chief sighed and slumped into his chair. I'm afraid Pete could go to prison for a very long time, he said. No one said anything for a minute. What if we found the baseballs? Dink asked. If Mr. Pocket got them back, could Pete get out of jail? A judge would have to decide that, Officer Fallon said. There will be a trial. I've been trying to get a lawyer for Pete. Did you find one? Dink asked. Yes, Officer Fallon said. He tapped a pencil against the allergreen box. But when I asked Pete, he said he wouldn't speak to her. That is the end of chapter 6, where we have Pete, who If you know anything about lawyers, lawyers are meant to defend you or kind of to protect you. But for whatever reason it might be, Pete is unwilling to talk to Officer Fallon and now the lawyer as well. And the kids are very worried that Pete's going to go to jail for a very long time. I don't know. Again, as always, feel free to make your predictions. And until next time, boys and girls, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.